Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're taking a look at a paper all about cognitive architectures for language agents.
Ooh, that's a mouthful.
It is, but it's super interesting stuff. Basically, we have virtual assistants now, like to play music.
Right.
Well, this is like the next level. Think, assistants that can actually reason, learn, make complex decisions.
Yeah, you're talking about agents that can figure out what we need and actually plan how to get it done, even in situations they've never seen before. That's a whole different game.
It is. And what's wild is some of these ideas are really old. Like the paper mentions these production systems, and apparently those have been around forever.
Oh yeah, production systems go way back, even before computers were like a thing.
Seriously?
Yeah, it's basically about manipulating symbols based on rules. If this, then that kind of stuff. It's wild to see how that's connected to what we're doing with LLMs today.
So these old systems are kind of like the great-grandparents of today's AI.
In a way, yeah. They paved the way for what we call cognitive architectures. Frameworks that try to, mimic how humans think. Memory, perception, planning, that kind of stuff.
So like the old school version of that was something called the SOAR architecture.
Exactly. It had its limitations. Tech back then wasn't what it is now, but it really set the stage.
And NW were basically taking those ideas and giving them the power of LLMs. It's like combining the blueprint of the mind with a supercomputer.
You got it. LLMs are becoming the brains of these new language agents, taking in info, making responses, even learning. And the cool part is, we can use prompting to guide them, like giving them specific instructions or examples.
So those prompts are kind of like shaping how the LLM thinks.
Exactly. We give it some control flow, influence its decisions, shape the outputs. It's powerful stuff.
Which brings us to the heart of this deep dive. CoALA. That stands for Cognitive Architectures for Language Agents. And this is a framework the paper lays out. Seems like it could be a game changer.
It really could. CoALA gives us a way to think about these agents in a structured way, breaks them down into modules, each with a job to do. It helps us see how it all fits together.
Okay, so how about a concrete example? Like, how does this actually play out in an agent?
Sure, so let's look at SACAN. It's an agent researchers use to control robots, like in a kitchen setting.
Oh, like to make dinner.
Haha, yeah. So the goal was to have this robot understand a request, like, hey, I'm hungry, can you make me a sandwich? And using CoALA principles, the SACAN agent would break down that request, figure out the steps, and then use its knowledge of the kitchen and the robot's abilities to, actually make the sandwich.
That's insane. So CoALA helps it go from something abstract, like make a sandwich, to actually doing it.
Yeah. And another key part of CoALA is the idea of different types of memory. Just like humans, these agents need memory to work properly.
Makes sense. So what kind of memory are we talking about?
Well, there's episodic memory. That's for remembering specific past experiences. Then you have semantic memory, which is for storing general knowledge about the world.
Like one's for personal events, the other's like a big encyclopedia.
Exactly. And there's also procedural memory, which is for the actual instructions or code that guides how the agent behaves.
So it's like giving these agents a whole inner world.
Yeah.
Right? Their own memories, facts, skills.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. And how CoALA puts that all together, how it uses those memories for decision-making and taking actions, well, that's where things get really interesting.
All right, I'm hooked. So we've gone from the ancient history of production systems to this wild new world of CoALA, but there's clearly so much more to uncover here. Well, let's dig deeper into how these memories come into play when these agents start interacting with the world.
Definitely. We'll dive into that.
So we know these agents have this structure for thinking and different kinds of memory, thanks to CoALA. But what I'm really curious about is how does it all work when they're actually out there in the world? Like, making a sandwich in a simulation is one thing. Doing it for real is a whole other story.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where the power of CoALA really comes in. One of the cool things about this framework is how it separates internal actions from external actions.
Internal and external, what's the difference?
So internal actions are things that happen inside the agent's own head, so to speak, like pulling up info from memory, making a plan, or even changing its beliefs based on what it's learned.
Okay, makes sense. So then external actions are like actually doing stuff in the world, like
Right.
moving a robot arm, sending an email, that kind of thing.
You got it. And this back and forth between internal and external actions is what makes these CoALA agents so powerful. They're not just sitting there processing, they're actually engaging with their environment, learning from it, using that to decide what to do next.
Okay, I'm going to need an example here. How does this actually play out in a real CoALA agent?
All right, let's talk about Voyager. This might surprise you, but it's an agent designed to play Minecraft.
Minecraft, the game where you build stuff with blocks.
That's the one. Now, you might not think of Minecraft as a bed of AI research, but it's actually a really rich and complex environment for these agents to learn in.
So this Voyager agent is running around, chopping down trees, building houses. What's so special about that?
The cool thing about Voyager is that it can constantly learn new skills and add them to its memory. Unlike other agents, it starts with a bunch of code-based skills, things like crafting tools, building simple structures. But here's the kicker. Voyager can actually figure out how to do NW things, and then it generates the code for those new skills and stores it for later.
Hold on, it's writing its ODON code. That's crazy. So it's not just following instructions, it's actually figuring out how to solve problems and then, upgrading its own abilities.
Yeah, exactly. So let's say Voyager needs to build a bridge to get across a ravine. If it doesn't have the code for that, it can reason through the problem, experiment, and when it finds a solution, bam, new skill unlocked.
That's wild. It's like the agent is evolving, becoming more capable all the time. But this makes me wonder, we're talking about Minecraft, a virtual world. What about agents that are designed to interact with other agents? Or even humans?
That's where episodic and semantic memory come in big time. Remember, episodic memory is all about remembering specific experiences, while semantic memory is about extracting general knowledge and beliefs from those experiences.
So the difference between remembering a specific conversation you had with someone versus forming a general opinion about them based on all your interactions.
You got it. And a great example of this in action is generative agents. These agents are put in a simulated social environment where they interact, go about their day, even form relationships.
Oh, wow. So like a Sim City for AI. They go to work, have parties, fall in love, all that.
You could think of it that way. But the key is they're using episodic memory to store memories of those interactions, and then semantic memory to pull out general knowledge and beliefs.
Okay, break it down for me. Give me a specific scenario. How would that actually work?
So let's say Agent A meets Agent B at a virtual coffee shop, and they have a good chat. Agent A will store that memory, who they talked to, what they talked about, how they felt. But later, it might think back on that and store a more general belief, like Agent B is friendly, or I like going to coffee shops.
So they're building up this whole inner world of memories and beliefs that shapes how they act in this little AI society. Fascinating. But it also makes me wonder about the boundaries between an agent and its environment, especially in these digital worlds. Where does one end and the other begin?
You're hitting on something really important there, and the paper actually talks about that. The authors talk about controllability and indispensability as key factors in figuring out these boundaries.
Controllability and indispensability. Okay, let's unpack that. Controllability means how much control the agent has over a certain element.
Right, exactly. Imagine an agent that can access something like Wikipedia, which is constantly being updated. That's clearly an external environment. The agent doesn't control what goes in there. But if the agent makes its own private copy that it can edit, well, that becomes more like internal memory.
So it's about who gets to, write the information. What about indispensability?
That's about how tightly something is integrated with how the agent actually works. So, say for a reasoning task, the agent uses separate prompts for coming up with ideas and evaluating them. If those prompts are super specialized, can't work on their own, then we might consider them part of the agent itself.
But if those prompts could be used with other agents for other tasks, then they're more like tools in the external environment.
Exactly. These distinctions can get really fuzzy, especially when you're talking about agents in these dynamic environments. But it's a crucial thing to think about, especially as these agents become more and more capable and independent.
It's almost like we're trying to define consciousness in a digital world. Wow. Okay, so we've talked memory, actions, this whole agent environment thing. What about the decision-making process itself? How do CoALA agents actually decide what to do?
That's the heart of it all, right? And CoALA gives us a way to understand the steps involved. It's helpful to think of it as a cycle.
Okay, walk me through it. What are the steps?
First, the agent has to come up with a set of possible actions. This could be based on its goals, what it sees around it, or info it pulls from memory.
So it's like brainstorming, what are all my options right now?
Exactly. But then comes the important part, evaluation. It has to look at those options and figure out which one is most likely to lead to a good outcome. And this is where it gets really sophisticated.
So it's not just picking something at random. It's actually trying to predict the consequences, make a smart decision.
Exactly. Some agents might use simple rules, but others, especially with the power of LLMs, can actually simulate what might happen if they take a certain action, like a little mental sandbox where they test things out.
That's incredible. It's almost like they're playing out different scenarios in their head. If I do this, then that might happen. If I do this, then... But how do they decide how much of that thinking to do before actually taking action?
Great question. And it all comes down to computational cost. LLMs are powerful, but all that simulating and predicting takes processing power and time. So agents have to balance thinking things through with acting efficiently.
So it's a trade-off between being thoughtful and being decisive. Some situations might call for quick action, others need more planning.
You got it. And that's one of the things that makes CoALA so cool. It can handle all kinds of decision-making styles, from agents that make snap judgments to those that plan everything out in detail.
Can you give me some examples of how this actually plays out in different CoALA agents?
Sure. Remember Seikan, our sandwich-making robot? Well, that's a good example of an agent that's all about efficiency. It needs to respond quickly to requests, no time to overthink things. So it uses a simpler approach, evaluating just a few actions based on its goal and the available resources.
But then you have agents like Tree of Thoughts, which, just the name, makes it sound like it's doing a lot of thinking.
Haha, you're right. Tree of Thoughts is designed for complex reasoning tasks where planning is essential. It uses the LLM to systematically explore different lines of thinking, like a tree with branches, evaluating each path, anticipating problems before settling on a solution.
So it really is like, think before you act, taken to the extreme. What kind of problem would you use that for?
Imagine trying to solve a logic puzzle, like one of those make 24 puzzles where you have to combine 4 numbers to get to 24.
Oh, yeah. Those can be tricky.
Exactly. Tree of Thoughts would start by trying different ways to combine those numbers. And for each combo, it would use the LLM to evaluate it, like asking, if I do this, how likely am I to get to 24?
So it's basically looking ahead, simulating different moves, trying to predict the outcome. And it can do that multiple steps ahead, right? Like, it's not just thinking about the immediate consequence, it's thinking several moves ahead, like in chess.
That's exactly it. And if one line of reasoning hits a dead end, it can backtrack and try another path. It's a very methodical and careful way to use the LLM for these complex problems.
This is also fascinating. Clearly, CoALA can create some really diverse agents.
Right.
But what's the big picture takeaway here? What's the exciting part for our listeners?
Well, the really cool thing is we've moved beyond just giving LLMs extra tools. We're building whole cognitive architectures around them. These aren't just language models with a few add-ons. They're becoming these integrated systems with real potential for intelligence and autonomy.
And CoALA is the blueprint that's making it possible,
Yeah.
giving us a way to understand and design these systems in a structured way. But it feels like we're just getting started. Where do we go from here? What are the next big frontiers?
That's the most exciting part. We've laid the groundwork, but there's so much more to explore, like how these agents can actually learn how to learn better, how they can change their decision-making over time.
That's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But also a little scary, right? If they're constantly evolving, how can we be sure they'll always act in ways we expect or even understand?
That's a huge challenge. As we give these agents more freedom, we have to make sure their goals are aligned with ours. It's a balancing act. We want them to grow, but we also need to make sure they stay safe and helpful.
So it's not just about making smarter AI, it's about figuring out how to make it a part of our world in a responsible way.
Exactly. We have to think deeply about what it means to create AI that can learn and act on its own. It's not just a technical problem, it's a philosophical one.
This has been an incredible deep dive. I feel like we've gotten a glimpse into the future of AI. What are some of the key things you think our listeners should take away from all this?
The biggest takeaway is this. AI is changing. We're moving from systems that just react to commands to agents that can actually think, learn, and adapt. And CoALA is a big part of that. It's giving us the tools to understand and design these incredibly capable systems.
And it's just the beginning. As LLMs keep getting better and we come up with even smarter ways to build and train these agents, who knows what's possible?
It's a thrilling time to be in this field. The next few years are going to be full of breakthroughs, things that will change how we interact with tech, and maybe even how we think about intelligence itself.
What a great way to wrap things up. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of cognitive architectures for language agents. It's been quite a journey. Man, we've covered a lot of ground, from like the ancient history of these ideas to these crazy CoALA agents that can do all this amazing stuff. I mean, it's one thing to have AI that follows instructions, but to have AI that can learn, reason, even write code, it's like a whole other level.
And what's really fascinating is that this CoALA framework, it's not just about understanding what we have and know below. It's like a roadmap for the future. Points to some seriously exciting directions for research.
Okay, so give me a glimpse into that future. What has you most excited?
Well, we talked about how these agents can learn, but imagine if they could not only learn new things, but also change how they learn. Like, become better planners, better at weighing risks and rewards, maybe even start setting their own goals based on their experiences.
Whoa. Okay, that's getting kind of deep. But wouldn't that also make them, like, way less predictable? If they're constantly changing, how do we know they'll still act in ways we expect or even understand?
That's one of the big challenges for sure. As we give these agents more autonomy, we got to make sure their goals are aligned with ours. It's a tricky balance. We want them to be able to grow, but we also need to make sure they're safe, that their actions are beneficial.
So it's not just about making smarter AI. It's about making sure it fits into our world in a way that makes sense. Ethically, I mean.
Precisely. We have to really think about the implications of creating AI that can think for itself and act on its own. It's not just a technical question, it's a philosophical one.
This is all super exciting, but
Yes.
also a little intimidating, to be honest. Sounds like there's still some big hurdles to overcome. What are some of the biggest challenges researchers are facing in this field?
Well, one of the biggies is figuring out how to build really robust working memory systems for these agents. Remember, working memory is that short-term space where the agent holds and manipulates information, crucial for planning, reasoning, making decisions. It's like their mental scratch pad.
So, like the difference between having a tiny notepad and having a giant whiteboard where you can really spread out and work through complex stuff.
Exactly. And as these agents get more capable, the tasks they tackle get more complex. Their working memory needs to keep up. Designing systems that can handle that complexity is a huge area of research.
What about that balance between letting the LLM do the reasoning versus relying on good old-fashioned human-written code? Is that a challenge too?
Oh, absolutely. LLMs are super flexible, amazing learners, but they can also be unpredictable, hard to interpret sometimes. Human written code gives you more control, more transparency, but it can be less adaptable and might not be able to handle those really open-ended problems we want these agents to solve.
So it's like choosing between a Swiss Army knife that can do a bunch of things okay versus a specialized tool that's perfect for one job.
Yeah, good analogy. Researchers are trying different approaches. Some are using human-written code for the high-level structure of the agent's decision-making, and then using LLMs for things like coming up with ideas, evaluating options, even learning new skills. Finding that right mix of flexibility and control is key.
This whole deep dive has been mind-blowing. I feel like I've gotten a sneak peek into the future of AI. What are some key things you'd want our listeners to walk away with?
I think the biggest takeaway is this. AI is undergoing a fundamental shift. We're going from systems that just react to commands to agents that can actually reason, learn, and adapt. And CoALA is at the forefront of this. It's giving us the power to design these incredibly capable systems and to understand how they work.
And it's really just the beginning. As LLMs keep getting better and we come up with even smarter ways to build and train these agents, the possibilities are, well, kind of limitless. It's a little scary, but also really exciting.
It is. It's an amazing time to be working in this field. Who knows what the next few years will bring? Breakthroughs that could change how we use technology, maybe even how we think about intelligence itself. Pretty wild stuff.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, I think we'll wrap up this deep dive into the world of cognitive architectures for language agents. Thanks for joining us. It's been quite a journey. And who knows, maybe we'll revisit this topic again soon.